So this episode of Solo Leveling, I honestly have a bone to pick. Now, I really can't explain too much without actually discussing the differences between what has happened in this episode and what is in the manhwa. So we'll definitely get into that first before we start getting into some deeper connections. The biggest thing is definitely going to be this part. So first things first, this episode probably is about 80 to 90% of it being filled in. There was only a few moments that actually were, like, especially towards the end, that were actually slate to slate almost with the manhwa. Everything that pretty much had to do, one, with the construction people and like how they're headhunting and all that was basically just added in to kind of fill in time. And this part, pretty much almost everything up to this part was added in, except for the meeting. MC was talking, saying, hey, we'll do what your plan is, but it's going to be the two of us and fill in some extras. That happened in the manhwa, but like I said in a review, I believe it was last week, that happened at the exact same time that he was offered to begin with. He was offered the job, and then he thought about it and it was like, you know what? We'll do it, but it's going to be the two of us only. And then you can just fill in other people. So that, like I said, they decided to take that out, have him go through the strife with Cerberus, and then add it back in. Doesn't really detract from the story too much. The way they did it, I think, is perfectly fine. But one thing did rub me the wrong way when I watched this episode, which, if you want to check out my reaction, it is posted on Patreon, so then that way you can follow along with what I'm saying, as we're watching the episode. But the biggest thing was here. When this episode happened, we had the S-rank hunter, the girl that was running around the track. She was actually in the dojo with this guy, and it's revealed that this guy is so good at his swordsmanship training that he was the one that actually trained the S-class hero. She is like a prodigy under him because he trained her sword skills. But the fact is, we know that he's actually has skills as a sorcerer, magician type deal where he fires fireballs and basically like a mage. Yet in real life, he's a very skilled swordsman. Now, what rubbed me the wrong way about this was the fact they didn't specify or talk about how good of a swordsman he is. That he's such a good swordsman that it's actually a huge detriment that, one, he lost his arm, two, he has skills as a mage when he's really, if he has some type of physical skills, that he would just probably be a S-class or A-class himself, but he doesn't have those skills, so he's just like a C-rank hunter with his mage skills, which that's why he was kind of, when he's walking down the street, like, dang, man, too bad I don't have like physical skills and such. And it's really a huge detriment. It lets people know, oh my God, we see him in the dojo and we see some no-name character like, oh, master, you're so cool, you're so awesome. But it would have given a bigger weight and more character to our guy here if it showed, like it did in the manhwa, that she was actually there training with him, how he was still able to beat her as the master, yet she was still S-rank and very well developed. But they decided to take that out, don't mention it, and add the fact that she was at the track so they can fill in this whole headhunter thing about the construction company, and really gave a lot of backstory towards our guy and why he's trying to build up his class and be a guild master to help out his father. So they took away one character's development and then added it in to the character development for the character of Yo Jinho. Like I said, that's what kind of rubbed me the wrong way. You know, maybe what I'm saying is a spoiler and they'll kind of discuss it in next week's episode when they're in the dungeon and he tries to be like, well, technically I'm a good swordsman because of who I've trained in the past. But the fact that they made no mention of it at all here, I was like, dang, okay, all right. I'll trust and see what they're doing. I'll sit back and relax and watch what they're doing. But like I said, there were a lot of changes than what the manhwa has portrayed in its character development and story. Also, they added this whole part in about this guy and talking about his family, because this, you gotta remember, this is the family that he was crying about in the first few episodes and literally left our MC to go home to. And it was like, okay, so we're kind of showing about his kids, his wife, and all this. Can we all agree that this is a huge death flag? Like, this is a huge red flag. Why? Whenever a anime, one, they added this stuff in, two, they're showing his child and his wife and how good they have it. She's married, show the ring and everything. And the girl's like, Daddy, you're very strong. It basically is like, it's a huge red flag. Like, man, this guy's so dead, isn't he? Which is a shame that they did something like this, because the fact, it was like, why? Why did you do this? Why? You're just basically telling everyone like, well, he might not make it out of the next dungeon that they plan on doing, even though he made it out of the dungeon that was the double dungeon. But you know, just having to bring the child in it, because this was the exact same thing that the guy that got split in half said in the double dungeon. Oh, my wife is just having a child and we got to make money. And next thing you know, dude gets bisected and then he's dead. So now yet again, exact same thing, another character. And this time they actually show the family, show the history. And it's like, oh, come on. You're so wrong for doing this. But we'll see next week when we're in the dungeon how it all turns out, whether he lives or dies. I don't know how they're going to actually show off the dungeon and how things go. We shall see. I can't stand this trope in some anime where you have an anime character, whether it's the main character, side character, or whatever, and then you have the parents that we know that the character might be a little stronger, but the parents like, well, you might just be sorry and you're probably getting in the way. Why don't you come home? Why don't you quit what you're doing? Whatever the case is. And in this case, here it is, this girl who has gone through the double dungeon, survived, literally has mental scars because of what happened. And her parents are like, oh, you're a B rank, so that's pretty strong for most people, but not for you. You're probably getting in people's way. Why don't you come back home? Like, what happened to parents actually believing in their children? Hello? So it's like, come on now. And this girl already feels insignificant, like she can't do anything. Yet her own parents are making her feel even worse. Thankfully, through all of that, she persevered to be like, you know what? Since the MC has persevered, I'm going to persevere as well. And we're going to show up and still, I mean, she's B rank. That's actually really, really good. Good on her to persevere and show up at this dungeon. Overall, like I said before, there was a lot of stuff that was kind of added and padded into this episode, like the construction company, why the guy is trying to get the construction company guild off because his father wants him to. And he wants to actually be someone important while his brother is trying to scout S-rank heroes and be ahead of him and be the leader for their father. I'm kind of dismayed that this episode really didn't, I don't want to say amount to nothing, but kind of was a filler episode. But I'm kind of relieved because that just means whatever happens in the dungeon is pretty much going to be all of next week's episode. So it's definitely gonna pop off because, hey, our MC's going to this dungeon. What's the worst that can happen? Even though the title of the episode is, oh, so you've been hiding your skills. So that wouldn't be the title of next week's episode if he didn't reveal himself in some way, shape, or form. So we kind of had to see some things that kind of is like great for this episode, but next week, next week is going to be really good and spicy. So we'll see how it all works out. Regardless, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review, this overview, showcasing kind of some of the changes. Some of the things that I saw was good. Some of the things that I was like, but we're definitely going to be looking forward to next week. Until then, you guys be safe, take care. Make sure you like the video, make sure you guys subscribe, and make sure you guys sign up for my Patreon, because we are definitely reacting to this anime and a few others that's on there. Have a good one, be safe, and Lord willing, I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Make sure to check out the extra content on our Patreon page, and thanks to our current patrons.
This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.